because President Trump is in Japan for a second day as he continues his nearly week-long trip across Asia. Soon he'll meet with business leaders in Tokyo after wrapping up remarks to U.S. troops aboard the USS George Washington, where he praised the Prime Minister of Japan.
This woman is a winner. So, we've become very close friends all of a sudden because their stock market today and our stock market today hit an all-time high. I have such respect for Japan and the country, and now I have a really great respect for the new and incredible Prime Minister. And I have to say this, the first female Prime Minister in the history of Japan. Madam Prime Minister.
Earlier, the leaders signed two agreements, the first of them on trade, offering few details, but promising to work toward a, quote, new golden age of the U.S.-Japan alliance. The second aimed at securing the supply of critical minerals and rare earths amid concerns about China's near monopoly on those subsidies and the leverage it gives them in trade talks. The president and the Japanese prime minister also met with families of citizens who were abducted by North Korea decades ago, with Trump saying the U.S. will do everything in our power to help them. It still remains an open question whether or not Trump will meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un while on this trip. Overall, though, the day has been full of pleasantries and praise. President Trump congratulated the prime minister on being the first woman to hold that office. You heard him mention it again there, and said the two countries will do tremendous trade together. The prime minister, meanwhile, announced she's nominating Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, and she also presented him with a golf-themed gift, including a putter owned by the assassinated Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who Trump was close with and golfed with while he was on this exact trip, during his first term years ago. Want to bring in MSNBC White House reporter Akayla Gardner. So, Akayla, let's start on the trade of it all, because that is really the thing that the president and the White House both have been touting as the central focus of this trip. What are you seeing in the fact that they're touting a new tremendous era or a golden age? What's the actual detail behind that, if any?
Yeah, one thing that stuck out to me throughout this trip in Asia, he has continued to make deals on critical minerals. And I think it shows how important the U.S. sees these minerals that really supply, the microchips that are in smartphones and other electronics, and potentially advanced weaponry as well. Mm-hmm. That's what he did today. But something that was really interesting in the text of that deal, he's talking about domestic manufacturing in the U.S. and in Japan. He wants them to sell to one another, but that is really the key part, is he wants to build up that manufacturing at home. He's also made deals with other countries we've seen already, Cambodia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, also on this issue. So that was hugely important for them. But then on the other side of this, you had defense. You heard the prime minister really saying that she wants to up defense spending in Japan. The U.S. and Japan have had a long-standing partnership, and President Trump has really prided himself on forcing or pressuring other countries to up their spending. Japan is not a part of NATO, but that is something that President Trump sees as a key accomplishment of his administration, is convincing those countries to up that spending. Japan is, though, an ally of NATO countries.
Yes, of course. And NATO spending has always been a central focus of the president. So the idea that other countries, whether they're in it or just adjacent to it, I think you're right to tout that as a focus. I think he's always also had great relationships with whoever has been in power in Japan. His closeness with Shinzo Abe, of course, can't be understated here. He was referenced a few times during this trip. But I think when you look at the rare earth minerals piece of it, it does feel like he's trying to level the playing field a little bit for the U.S. as he heads into this sidelines meeting with President Xi a little bit later this week. Can you talk about the way the White House is looking ahead to that meeting and the way that all of these other stops in some ways are precursors to set them up for a successful stance there?
Yeah, and a part of those deals is trying to lock these countries into a trading relationship with the U.S. than compared to China. But as you mentioned, everyone is going to be watching that meeting later this week, including Japan, who wants to really shore up their relationship with the U.S. as a bulwark to China. But yes, everyone is going to be watching that meeting. There's a ton on the agenda. Perhaps the biggest thing is also trade. The president threatened these 100% tariffs. But it sounds like U.S. officials are expressing optimism that that actually won't go into effect. They believe that they've secured an agreement for China to defer this program that they see really sweeping in scope that would essentially require foreign companies to seek permission before they export products with even 0.1% of critical minerals that are refined in China or originate from China. They believe there will be somehow a deferral of that program, maybe for the U.S., maybe for the entire world. But I think there's a lot of questions about what that could actually look like and if some of the promises that we're hearing will come to fruition. President Trump just said yesterday, even the things that we were talking about 2 days ago might not actually happen. He said nothing has been agreed to, but we heard the Treasury Secretary over the weekend just expressing a lot of optimism. They seem to think that they're going to get a lot out of these conversations with Xi. And I think another big thing on the agenda is agriculture and these soybean purchases. China has had this boycott specifically as a leverage going into these conversations that they knew were going to happen either way, but they seem to believe that they're going to get those purchases to come back on board. And I think President Trump has really been struggling with farmers, a key constituency group for him, not just on soybeans, but a number of other issues. And I think he's really looking to bring that home.
Yeah, I mean, one of the immediate places that I would look to see how this is faring from a domestic politics perspective is right to the heart of Iowa, a state that Trump prides himself on turning ruby red. And now, of course, we'll see what farmers there ultimately do. How do they feel this America First agenda that was supposed to be so beneficial to them? How is it actually playing out? That's something we'll see over the course of the next few months, even over the next year. But for now, we'll keep looking for what that trade meeting actually brings. It is one of the more normal ways that we've seen this White House do diplomacy and trade negotiating, putting together a framework at the staff level before bringing in the principals. Right. We'll see ultimately what that yields. But the other place where I think that they need some kind of framework in negotiating is right back here at home, because we've now reached day 28 of the government shutdown, 4 full weeks and heading into a 5th. As Senate lawmakers returned to Capitol Hill yesterday, the Senate chaplain, Dr. Barry Black, had a stark reminder for them during his opening prayer.
Lord, remind our lawmakers that no gold medals are given for breaking shutdown records, but a crown of righteousness is given to those who take care of the lost, last, and least.
Dire warning there. Republicans and Democrats remain at an impasse over government funding. But now some lawmakers are working to introduce standalone bills that would address specific effects of the shutdown, including pay for air traffic control and TSA workers, as well as for military and non-furloughed federal employees. The Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, didn't definitively say yesterday whether he would bring these measures to the floor for votes, instead saying the easiest way for federal employees to get paid again is by opening up the government. Easier said than done, obviously. Thune also spoke with President Trump on Sunday night about the shutdown and said the president is, quote, very engaged and committed to reopening the government. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance, I'm told, is expected to join Senate Republicans for their regular lunch meeting today. That gathering comes ahead of key tariff votes this week. But Vance is also likely to face questions about this very issue, how to get out of a shutdown. I mean, Akela, is the White House offering their own stamp on this? Because what I keep hearing from Republicans is Trump is engaged, Trump is engaged. And yet, as Jeff Mason, your colleague at the White House, came on here yesterday and said, usually during shutdowns, presidents who have foreign travel previously booked would be pulling those trips down. Instead, we've seen President Trump spending more time focused abroad, whether it's in Israel, whether it's now in various countries throughout Asia. What is the White House saying behind the scenes about what they want to happen here if the president is, in fact, as engaged as Republican leadership says?
Well, the White House does say a lot of these summits, especially the ones in Asia, were pre-scheduled. They weren't ones that he was going to miss. But I am really watching that meeting today with Vice President J.D. Vance. I think he's seen as somewhat of a pragmatist, particularly from his Senate colleagues. Of course, he was a senator for 2 years. But his language, the way that he has even talked about Affordable Care Act subsidies, seems different to me than how the president has. He at one point says we like some of the subsidies, suggesting perhaps there could be some reforms to others, saying some of them are going to waste, fraud, and abuse. But President Trump has increasingly seemed like he's not open to extending these subsidies. And I think best case scenario for the White House and their perspective is they want the government to reopen with no concessions. But I think on the Democratic side, one thing that I saw yesterday that potentially could change the calculus is the American Federation of Government Employees came out yesterday and said they are calling for Democrats to open the government. Yeah. And we are at that point of the shutdown where there is real pain. People's rents are going to be due by the end of the month. You also have SNAP benefits expiring. It doesn't seem that there's obviously off right there. But as you mentioned, there are these workarounds that the White House continues to endorse that normally in past shutdowns would really force some sort of compromise. And they're continuing to go down this path of let's find ways to pay military members. Let's find ways to pay law enforcement officials. So that seems like the route that they're trying to go on. But I'm really interested to see if Vice President Vance strikes a different tone than that today.
Or sets up any kind of a different off-ramp here, because I do think that Republicans on the Hill, especially in this second Trump era, have been really loath to move on anything that is not blessed either publicly or privately by the White House. And so if Vance is on the Hill as an emissary, and I would note that when he was in the Senate, he often took positions at odds with where Republican leadership was on a variety of issues. But the idea that he is close to key members of Republican leadership, including John Barrasso, the fact that he's coming to this lunch at this important point. And I think you're right to bring up all of the various linchpin moments now that we see as potential inflection points. November 1st, the day that people start getting into their open enrollment on these ACA subsidies, seeing what their premiums look like without it. And then, of course, the way that the government has continued to, in your words on this piece, flood the zone and talk about blaming Democrats overtly, despite the fact that it likely violates ethics rules for government employees to use taxpayer-funded platforms with that kind of political speech. I think all of it just lends to this continued mixture of stalemate. And even that federal workers union coming out and saying, just please reopen the government. It hasn't yet moved people on the Hill, at least not yet. I'll be up there later today. We'll see if anything changes. I know you'll be tracking it all from the White House. MSNBC White House reporter Kayla Gardner, thank you.